Hi, and welcome to another episode of Conversations for Connection. I am Dr. Mzi Chachela. I am your host. The intention of our show is to bring you topics that will empower you and help you and those who are in your life or those around you. Today, we are focusing on the topic of mental health, but we are taking a different approach. As in our society, we've been learning more and more about mental health, and there's a plenty of resources in the public space to help us address our mental health. However, mental health struggles remain among the most significant and sometimes evasive human experiences. There is significant gaps and plenty of unaddressed and unlabeled struggles. Let me introduce to you our guest who will help us identify and address these deficiencies. My guest today is Dr. Vuyo Yokwe. He is a general practitioner based in Johannesburg, South Africa. He's a father to two boys. He runs a mental matters platform called The Mind Zone on Instagram and Facebook. This year, he is putting together an inaugural men's mental vitality conversation, which will be in October 2022. This April, he is hosting one of monthly sessions, which are talk events building up to the main event. The theme for the build-up sessions is Sharing My Story is the New Strong, while the annual theme is Creating Safe Spaces through relatable storytelling. Hi, Dr. Yokwe.
Hey, hi, Dr. Z. How are you?
I am good. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much.
Please tell us about your story and what you do in Mind Zone.
Yeah, Dr. Z, I want to start about my own experience before we go into the mental discomposures and mental matters. I'm one who suffered depression whilst I was a clinical manager for hospital, man. So I was in charge of the hospital, but then I was having all of these issues where I feel that I'm sort of isolated, I am worthless, and all of those feelings. But it would go very much deep. I would now be dependent in alcohol because I'm numbing myself, to these experiences. My life was just not going the right way. Then my mother saw this, and I was, in denial. And the one thing about it is the fact that around me, there are supposed to be people who should be offering help, the psychologists, the psychiatrists, but I did not go out and seek for help. And that's another learning curve that we want to have today. And man, it was my mother who jumped in, who went to the CEO and said, listen, something is wrong with this man. And I shared sentiments to say that I am not about to lose my son under these circumstances. And only then, did I go and seek for help with her. And she became my safe space. I don't know if in Canada, safe space is understood. But safe space is anybody who can listen to you when you've got any problem and any difficulties coping, mental discomposures. Now, what we do, because of my mother finding me in the space, I realized that, hey, man, it's difficult to own up and volunteer and disclose. When you've got depression, that's one of the biggest things, and that's the symptom I don't think we talk about. About the thing we need to highlight the fact that it is difficult to disclose. That's number one. So then, because of all of this, I found safe space, another element, difficult to disclose. Then I thought, man, how then should it be for a man who is not in the space as mine, who still needs to navigate the health system, go and do something that is very difficult to do, to label himself as weak, according to what society says, and says, listen, I'm not coping, I'm falling apart. Not acceptable in our culture, I think in many cultures as well. So that's why I then thought, listen, after finding help, I discovered started Mental Matters platform, Mind Zone. So there we discuss about all mental health issues and nullifying the stigmas, the myths, in fact, as well. And like you did say, then we are starting now to have conversations outside the internet space. That's about.
And you mentioned that your mom was the first person who noted this. So you were fortunate that someone who knows you, someone close to you, saw something was not right. And sometimes in our society, we find that if someone is not okay, we just starting blaming them, saying, oh no, he's not okay, he's mean, he's this. So importance of having people in your life that also pay attention.
I was just going to say that there's a coining that has started to be called safe space. So for me, I really call her that. And Z, I must tell you, I was so embarrassed, very embarrassed for her to come up in my workspace and really, suggest these ideas, or not that ideas, but rather these very fortunate steps that she took. With me, I still felt the stigma, Z. I still felt the fact that I am a doctor in charge here. It's a very small hospital, and now I was going to be going away on a special leave to see somebody, to see a shrink.
Yeah.
So,
and being person in power and having influence at your work, and also being a man, where the society says man up, and whatever struggle you have, man up and keep going. What are challenges that you've seen in your clinical practice, in your experience in our society where you are, and also in Mind Zone, that you've seen in men? What are challenges when it comes to mental health, or even disclosing mental health? What are the struggles that men experience?
Yeah, so something that is shameful to stand up and concede that I've got a mental discomposure, or yes, it's very shameful. And I find that most men, they talk to quite a few psychologists who visit Mind Zone, and a few of them would tell you that it is a maturity thing. Emotional maturity has not been programmed into men of our society, especially where cultures are staunch to have such claims as, or statements as, real men don't cry. That's what then, when they're young, they understand. And when trouble comes through, they are not then ready to say, let me talk to my best friend, let me talk to my partner. And you find that even the partner is not sure what is going on. So those are the struggles. And in fact, we know by stats now that we think that, at least in South Africa, there's one in 5 women has, when we talk about depression, and only 1 in 8 men. There's a gap there. And there's a gap there. There are those that don't disclose, and therefore that number is not a number that we really can talk about. So that really, those are the struggles that they don't come forward.
And you are the first person I heard talking about the concept of mental discomposures. And it seems to be this broad and deeper description of mental health issues that are more than just what we know. Can you tell us about what mental discomposures are?
For me, finding from literature, from studies, we do understand that the number 1 in 8 men is not a true number. So therefore, there are many people who are there undiagnosed. And therefore, when somebody like my mother, who did not see a depression or an anxiety or anything, did see something. So maybe this is one thing that is a societal alignment to understand that, no, somebody is not coping. So you know Z, I know Dr. Z, if there's something that I see, I'm not a doctor, but if there's something that I see that is untowards with how he's acting, and now he has changed character. For me, a person should understand that there's something, even if they cannot diagnose. So basically, when we talk about mental health, we talk about a clinical alignment, which is known. And those are the figures and the numbers that are there. And then for me, looking at somebody else, if you've got you see something which is within a space where the people are not coping, they have whatever they have, but maybe due to shameful experiences, especially in men, painful emotionality, perhaps psychological traumas, but now you cannot put a finger on it. So I just, loosely or generally call them mental discomposers.
Okay. Yeah. And also think in your work with Mind Zone, you also talk about the wars that can stem that can come out of us trying to address mental health issues. The whole issue about patriarchy, femininity, and all that. And you are very good at addressing this. What have you seen when it comes to where now our fight or our struggle with mental health, or trying to address mental health, now becomes this fight between men and women?
You're right. You know our society and how easy it is now to throw suggestions and opinions on the net, and people are activism of A and B. And the other one thing that we do know, which is true, is that really women have undergone lots of struggles raising children alone. And maybe you can even ask, why are they raising children alone? Where are these men? And then the questions would be, are they emotionally available at all? Because there's just something that I want to sort of also say before I go to the two wars I talk about. But I think we're going to cover it, Mzi, in the emotional availability space. So we know that these women have done quite a lot. I was raised by a single mother.
Okay.
Right? So now there is rage now from society to say that, no, listen, but men, there's things flying around that men are dogs and men are not responsible enough and all of that kind of thing. But I don't think that we have looked at what the pain is.
What is the pain?
Yes. I think that when we start, so therefore, we have a lot of female activism and feminine activism, which is okay to address issues. That's very good. But now, when we start talking about mental matters for men, which is now what I am doing, and so then some of the people are also thinking about, we ought to have an eye that looks to say, now we are not going to create a rope and let it have two ends and say that we are pulling towards the patriarchy side and then the others pulling on the other side. There's a gentleman who is called Ayanda, my guy who is here, who has a documentary on MTV. I discussed immensely. And he really was the first person to show this to me that, listen, we need to be gentle to make it known that when we are dealing with issues of men, it is because there's people around them as well. So it's not the fact that we are fighting, I am the right one, and then the feminine side says, I am the right one, and then therefore we are having a patriarchal war versus a femininity war. We then ought to have something that then encompasses everybody, society, when we talk about men.
So the struggle of a man with mental health is as important as the mental health of a woman. And as a father, you've seen the influence that you have in those people around you.
You're right. So I think there's something that you wanted to add up there so that I can take it off.
So I want to hear your story or the lessons that came from your experience of depression and addressing that. Was there any change in how you related to your family, to your loved ones at work, and how you show up to the society?
So before this, I need to really touch on the fact that when we speak about males and their mental matters and depression and their ability to tap into their emotionality, that's an element that talks to the people around me. If you've got somebody who, according to many psychologists I talk to, who says that most men are emotionally mature up to the age stage of 15, because then they were shut down. And therefore, they can't process much of the things. So they are not mature at all. So that's big.
That is very good to know. I have not heard that before. And I think it's a very important piece of information that will help us navigate through this.
Yeah, thanks, Mzi, man. So Mzi, imagine this man who then grew up without a father and now is supposed to be a leader in a family where he needs to commit first. Now, then that talks and raises questions to someone who's listening to say, okay, then what is going to happen? What has happened with the man who are just players who are not coming to anybody? So their breakdown of this is the fact that, let me make an analogy of a student who just passed and finished their engineering course, and then now they're going into a space where they need a mentor and they're going to be interns. Now, there's somebody who shows them what to do, leads them on what to do, supervises them on what to do. They go into a little bit of a failure, but somebody shows them that, listen, this is how you curve around it, and then do it again. So then it gets programmed into how then you are able to, in your future, relay and show yourself and show up. But then for men, that's a very difficult thing, where then you are raised and you don't have a father. Now you hear struggles, you are taught about things that are raging around your community, how people are divorcing, and then this is your only picture, because you have not seen a mother and a father who navigate the road together. You go into a space where there's a wall. Now you don't commit. And when people think that then, this one is just mature, but that's what is engraved in them. So that's what then would be programmed into them. So I think that then when you get to reach yourself, your vulnerability, and you talk about what your pain is, as in my case, where I then started to have a therapy, when I started to then find myself to say, listen, I have struggles. And the issue of society telling me that I should be I am weak when I present myself. I can just put that now into a new being that we're going to stash and put out into the rubbish bag because I am going to tell my story. And then what that did is it made me to look deeper into myself more than what society and societal walls are bringing. So I became emotionally available to the next person, helped me with raising my, and at some stage I even asked him, Amila, how does it feel to have a father? The dude looks at me and says, oh, bro, that's so weird. And I'm thinking, it's something I'm navigating. Your age, I think you are much more mature in me in understanding the father-son relationship than I do. And therefore, the guidance. And therefore, dude, you must understand that some of the times it's not going to be easy to be a father that's always correct because sometimes I will be angry at some of the things because maybe I was even taught perhaps that the one thing that you are doing now, this is the way that I revoke it. But now I want us to have a new relationship where then I also put you as someone who's also a person responsible for the future, that kind of thing. So I am going as we are going, but at least for the first time, I'm able to be emotionally available to you. I think when I'm Z, it also comes back to saying that when you are talking about mental matters for men, you are opening up a space for those around you. So then therefore, you don't have the patriarchal war because you are just making a husband available for their wife and therefore that's a family. That's the overall picture of it.
I love the concept of emotional availability and you use it in your sessions. And I want you to correct me in this. When I think about emotional availability, I think that once you reach that stage, it means then you have a space where you can work on your emotional intelligence, on your self-awareness, and you are able to rein in your emotions like anger while embracing them. Know that this is what happens when you are angry, but what is the healthy way of addressing that? That's what comes into mind when you talk about emotional availability. Is that correct way of looking at it, or it's more than that?
You are right. I like that the analogy you bring that when I am angry about a particular issue, then how do I moderate it? How do I then channel myself around it? Okay, this is the truth, Mzi. Society has got a big role in how you moderate and how you make avail and how you navigate around emotions. Let's put on the left side, painful emotionality or traumas or shameful experiences. Society says, listen, you must be a man. You must be strong. Men don't cry. And then that's it. When you're 15 years of age, there's no questions around it. You cannot go in, you cannot navigate anything that's a shameful experience. You just bury them. Never stop becoming pain. They become then emotional pains. And then when you grow older, things that you don't understand. And now the pain has not gone. Now, on the right side, there are the sort of more violent or much more aggressive spectrum of pain on the right side. So that's anger itself, it's aggression itself, it's all of those. But now these are also in line with the spectrum from the left to right, left being the shameful experiences, you bury them, you don't show them. Then aggression, you can show. In fact, you need to show because you're a man. What then happens is when somebody comes and steps over your territory, you stand up, you show aggression, then you are a man. You now fence up your territory. So that's what society says. Hence, the child gets locked to understand that I can be angry. Now, when you talk about emotional availability, then you talk about anger, and he knows that in his mind, that's a dominance. This is what I can do. And naturally, they get angry. And now they also, when the pain hasn't gone away, then you see them going into alcohol, into drugs. You want to numb this pain because then you're not making it available. Now, once you are vulnerable to pain, to say, listen, no, I cannot go on like this. I have to navigate the shame and I have to navigate the other discomposures. Then you put them on the table. I think then that's the best space where then you are able to look at them as well. And you also now look on the other right side to say, now I need to taper down how I show up empty. And therefore I get much more in sync and in alignment with my society and the people around me.
Talking about the rage that seems to be normalized in our society, one of the ills that our society has experienced, and you being in South Africa and myself being in South Africa, where we've been seeing more and more cases of gender-based violence to a point that, it's becoming a pandemic, so to say. And what I have formulated just studying and looking at people that struggle with gender-based violence, or men that are so angry that they hit and harm the women in their lives, that you've talked about suppressed feelings of anger, unaddressed mental health issues. Would you say, as men, for us to address GBV and all these social ills, let's start with our mental health and then it grows from there?
It makes sense for me. I've asked these questions. I've had webinars with experts. I've had webinars with psychiatrists, psychologists, and I've asked this question because then I didn't want to make an assumption myself. And they do say, listen, proportionally, people who do these things are people who they're not going to go into a psychiatric institution. Hence, I'm talking about the mental discomposures. Maybe when you talk about mental discomposures, you talk about what society does. And perhaps then that's something that we don't have in our clinical spaces. So because society does not give a room for men to express themselves, let me start here. I really call out gender-based violence. I want us to put it on a spectrum again when you the same way we put our emotional spectrum. Now, I want to put on the left gender-based violence, but also on the right, I want to put suicides. But now, then you will see in South Africa is one of the countries with the highest rate of suicides. And it happened 5 times more men die in South Africa than women. So you do need to now know that within that spectrum, something is very wrong. We've got a lot of psychiatrists, lots of resources, lots of psychologists, but no men come forward to say what their problems are. Let me tell you a very small, I'm not condoning this, but I'm going to tell you a very small day-to-day experience of a man in South Africa who has perhaps lost a job, lost their income. So there's pressures on men to put food on the table.
Yeah.
Men should provide. But once then that is taken away and the person with underlying other issues of this maturity emotionally, then those stash up, a man loses their job and can't put the food on the table. Now, the woman would then, let us say, continues to have her, what do you call this? Okay, her hair done and everything the previous way that she used to look after herself.
So continue spending the money as if there's still more income coming.
No, she continues to look good. She continues to look beautiful. She perhaps used, I don't know, she would have done hair for 5,000 rand before, but maybe she's only doing it now for 50 rand, but she continues to look good.
Okay.
Now the men, because of their authority being threatened, because they can't put the food on the table, it's a common thing for them to even ask, okay, but who gave you money for hair? Why are you looking like this? And then they start getting jealous, so on. And then once a man, his authority is threatened, something happens. But you already know that these are the people that need to be supported psychologically. But then we don't have a system that does, because nobody comes forward and nobody notices it. And men will not go forward to you, Mzi, as a psychiatrist, sitting on the other side of the table. They don't do that. So now these angers are then sort of justified in a way in their minds that she is stamping my authority and my territory. And
which is a tragedy.
And then because then it is justifiable to just be angry, then they start hitting, they start pushing, they start feeling that they are now not being respected. And now that's bad. So as we have spoken, we need to taper that down. The fact that you need to now be able to navigate how this anger spectrum of anger that you were born with, or you were born into society that condones it, should be tapered down.
Yeah.
Once you are emotionally available, these things become clearer to you, because you are a baby. You are a 40-year-old man, but you are a baby when it comes to the fact that anger is not the right thing.
It's not the right thing. So the key is to dig deeper and go down to the source, which is addressing the traumas that you have, the anger that you have internalized and suppressed, such that you know your worth and you are not attached to all these other societal norms, that you are the provider, that you have authority, all those things, that you understand that people in your life are not a threat. Your wife is not a threat. Your partner is not a threat. There is no place of violence. And I always think as well that men tend to be hostile when their partners call them to account instead of being, which is part of this emotional availability and maturity, right? That being taken to account by people that matter to you is normal and it's part of life. I love how you break it down.
And maybe the question, Madam Z, is then we are here, we talk about these issues, then what is going to happen? And I'll give you the answer now. Nothing is going to happen as long as we continue to only train experts and not mobilize a system by which disclosure is going to be promoted. And therefore, we need to debrief society. Mm-hmm. We need to shift culture and change narrative, right? Because I think this is where everything came from, to say that you are not allowed to speak about the issues. So perhaps, Z, you might want to know what it is that we're doing.
Yes, yes, please.
Can touch on.
Yeah, take us down that route, because certainly we need practical solutions to these things, and which is what MindZone is doing.
Sure, man. Thank you, Z. The one answer is to address this with societal norms. And you and me and all of the health experts or the mental health experts need to listen to what social advocacy is saying and also get incorporate. So our stance, as you also did mention that in our annual theme, we have creating spaces through relatable storytelling. Now, what we want to do is, if Dr. Chachela is a CEO of a country that's well respected, he's a high profile person, we want him to tell us their story the same way I tell my story. So when people look at this person and then say, wow, if we see him as a successful man, but now he's coming out to tell us that, listen, I've got difficulties, I've got this shameful experience, and this is how I navigated through it. Now they will be able to relate, so relatable storytelling. Now, if there is a celebrity here in South Africa, man, there's 2 suicides of very famous celebrities that have happened within, I think, a space of 3 weeks. And one of them was one of a very respected gentleman, but it shocked us to say, to hear that he took his own life. Right? If we have more of celebrities who come forward to say, we want to partner with you as the health segment, we want to partner with you as the corporate, we want to tell our stories as well, so that we have followership. Today, that's the game. The digital space has followership, but then the language they need to bring is to say, listen, hey, I'm not coping. It's difficult. And now once we start understanding that they go through this, and then the following day they show up at work and then they present a beautiful seminar, then they say, oh, okay. The person who's relating to this will then say, listen, therefore, I'm not over, right? I can still go out and talk to a therapist because now it's a fashionable thing. It's a relatable thing now to disclose and find a therapist.
It's normalized.
That way we will be matching. It's normalized. That's it now.
Wow. And I just love that, using the powerful tool of this digital era and the powerful tool of storytelling, because certainly you can read a textbook to people and read all the ways, but if they can't relate to your experience and relate to the story, then we miss a lot of people.
Human experience.
So what I got from our conversation is, well, from your experience, you experienced mental health issues, but you had someone who helped you start the process of addressing it. And then after that, you took ownership of it and you went on to work on your mental health, which you are still doing, and helping a lot of people through MindZone. And also that men need to address their mental health because there's a problem of lack of emotional maturity. And you said most men shut down by age 15. I want you to take me there.
That's the thinking. Obviously, nobody has done perfect studies on this, but then it is the maturity state of a gentleman, of a man, depending on the country where he is and what society is saying. Now, if they are programmed by society that you are not supposed to share your emotions as a man, anger is the thing. So then they tend to get angry. And therefore, when you touch or you challenge them emotionally, then going to lift up a fist and give you a shot on your jaw. So that's how they operate. So they are not best people in terms of being feminine, right? They cannot show their feminine side. They cannot show their caring side. They cannot show their compassionate side. They cannot show their being a father all-rounded and also gentle. So the typical father in South Africa would just sit and keep quiet and just read the newspaper. And if a child comes to talk heart to heart, they are not up for that. Then what it means is just that the age of maturity is quite low.
So
Emotional maturity.
because not allowed to express your emotions, it's not normal in the society, and you have to be this strong.
You are weak.
And then it
You are
results in violence. Oh, yeah.
You're very weak. You're a weak man. So you identify yourself as a strong man. So you need to guard those.
Yeah.
And in fact, not even guarding those, you are already programmed. That's how you are going to be navigating it. Yeah.
And what I got from you is that by addressing the emotional aspect or the mental health aspect of a boy child, of a man, you are uplifting the society, because they will make healthy spouses, healthy partners, and healthy fathers. And that's how we change our society. You change, you start with the man in the mirror, and then with your family and the society.
Great analysis, Mzi. Hence, then, we are not, as we approach this, we are not holding a rope to saying we're fighting patriarchal wars, because then we are comprehensive in looking for the boy child, looking for the daughter, as you say,
Yes.
looking for the partner. So and by the way, we are also partnering with another NPO based in Cape Town and talking to the boy child.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it doesn't say the boy child, it say my boy child. That's another thing that's in parallel now to what we are doing. And I think I also did not touch on what we are doing. So
yes, please
we are having
tell us more.
So we have conversations where men with similar mental discomposures sit together, able to tell their story. But first, we have this high-profile person of society telling their story, then they relate, then they're able to say, oh, by the way, this is what I also want to do. I want to tell my story as well. We are not yet there. We are hoping that then the government is going to say, listen, here's resources for people who want to now consult, because we are hoping that disclosure rate is going to be high. So now these little sessions, we hold them monthly, and we've got one in April, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then for the monthly ones, we say sharing my story is the new strong. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we need that advocacy in that space. So for the main event that's going to be in October, we plan to have a conference-based kind of a discussion where we've got panels. The way we do it, we've done it, but through webinars before. And now we needed a physical gathering of men, now
Mm-hmm.
even the boy child children as well. So that's going to be the one. We're launching it in June, but then that's going to be where now we want to say that we need to merge experts, mental health experts,
Mm-hmm.
social advocacy voices, and also the people on what we cooperate, so that then the corporate also merge in. But I like the analysis that you are putting through,
Mm-hmm.
because now it is not only for men, but it is also for the community as well.
For the community. And one of the main things here when we talk about topics is, I've seen this in many things, there's a bit of elitism in terms of people say, oh, I'll talk about emotional intelligence, I'll talk about mental health, but it's for people who are educated, it's for people who are urban. And then there are people in villages, there are people in the township, which also shape our society. And there are men out there. And tell us how you're reaching those people. You're already doing it with the digital space. Are we going to have sessions where we reach even to the deeper rural parts of our society?
Yeah. In the webinar, which is structured the same way we want to structure our future conversations, we had a leader from the traditional society. We had
Great.
The gentleman Ayanda Magai, who is in the progressive, I'd say, community. Progressive community, I mean people who are in the urban spaces, people who are in the digital spaces. Now, the leader, the traditional leader, represented the staunch people who are culturally bound. Now, going forward, we hope, we have not yet put up a date for that. Sorry, Z, I had an interview with Metro FM. I also had one with Umhlobo Wenene. Umhlobo Wenene is a place coming, is a radio station covering the rural spaces.
It's got a far reach in the rural areas and the villages. Mm-hmm.
We then did have quite a lot of feedback for people to say, listen, please tell Vuyo. Somebody knows someone who knows me, then says, listen, I need to tell my story. My child, who is, for the first time I saw my child in 2 years, because he has been going out and meeting wrong people. And now he is a fully fledged druggie. And and then the lady says it in her story, in her own words. She says, I cried when I saw that child. I did not even know who it was. So now she says that, no, this man, Dr. Vuyo Yokwe, must come and make a conversation here in the rural areas.
Yeah.
So what you're asking is something that is in our pipeline and which is relevant. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And I think, by reaching to such big radio stations like Umhlobo Wenene, I grew up listening to that and learned a lot from that radio station. So congratulations on that.
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
Sure.
What are your last words that you would love to leave us with?
We need to shift culture and change narratives. We need to address the issues which were swept under the mat, the carpet. We need to now know that the young boy that I'm raising must be able to be emotionally available so that he has a shot at raising a better family, at raising a better girl, at taking care and nurturing their wife. So we need to have conversations now. We need to stop the men who, when they find that there's a wall around them, take their lives. We need to stop that. We need to take action, and we need to have people from all sorts of spaces in the community, the academia, the socials, and also the people in the progressive communities, Instagram, digital spaces, to merge and drive these conversations. It is going to be better when we have started our job to say, men, we congratulate you for speaking out. And we know that men want to do this, but then they are very scared. So it is good that men now understand more because they've been listening to what people talk about on mental health issues, but now they want their own space really, and this is what we want to do.
And I love how, with your great knowledge as a physician, you are able to break it down to simple terms that are still very powerful without losing your message, but relatable and easy to understand for someone who is not in the medical space. Thank you so much. I appreciate. Thank you for giving us your time. Thank you.
It has been a wonderful time to be with you, Mzi. You are one of the people who are transformational in terms of how we deliver healthcare to people, because we can no longer sit behind the desk and wait for people to come to us. So the digital spaces does not only mean that we show up on Instagram, but then what initiatives are we doing? This initiative is one of the biggest. And I've challenged you before. You sort of also wanted to facilitate this and accelerate it, that we coin something very strong and talk about social health conversations. Social health conversations are going to involve us as clinicians and also community. But in that space, conversations, listening to what they want, then interventions. So social health conversations and interventions, that's exactly what you're doing. So big ups to you, man.
Thank you, Dr. Vuyo.
Sure, man. Thank you so much.